All right, guys, good morning. Okay, we are going to go over photosynthesis. Let me go ahead and zoom in here so you guys can see better. Let's see, view, present. All right, so we are going to give a very brief, oversimplified version of photosynthesis today, okay? Everything I tell you, there is way more to this, okay? And I do encourage you guys to take other classes here at Olathe West. If you are interested in plants or photosynthesis and this sparks any interest today, we have horticulture classes here, and it's an awesome opportunity if this is something that you're interested in. So, as an overview, all organisms need a constant supply of energy. And we've been focusing on this. We talked about the characteristics of life and how every living thing needs energy. And they need energy in order to be able to complete cellular processes. So, for most life on Earth, the ultimate source of energy is the sun. Okay, so that's where all of the energy that we use in our bodies, it's all going to come from the sun. So converting that energy source into something usable is going to be accomplished by photosynthesis. So through plants, which is why we absolutely need plants. If plants were not on this earth, we would not be either, okay? Because plants are going to do photosynthesis that is going to convert sun's energy into something that we can actually use. So here, like I said, everything's going to be oversimplified today, but a definition of photosynthesis is the overall process by which sunlight, which is light energy, water, and carbon dioxide are chemically converted into chemical energy stored inside glucose. So glucose is a sugar, it's a carbohydrate, if you remember back to our macromolecules. And so this picture does a good job of explaining how it does that, okay? So if you see here, there's the sun. This is my light energy, okay? We often call light photons, which is where the word photosynthesis comes from. So you have your light, you have your photons, and they're gonna strike down on a plant. So you can see that happening in the picture, okay? While light is striking down on the plant, you're going to have water coming up through the roots, okay? And you're also going to have carbon dioxide coming in through the stomata of a plant. And so stomatas are openings on the leaves, and this is how water and carbon dioxide are going to be able to enter and exit the leaf. And remember, most of photosynthesis is going to happen inside the leaf, because photosynthesis needs light. That's the first part. And so we looked at a microscope of an onion bulb, and remember that didn't have any chloroplast, and that was because it doesn't receive light. But leaves, they do have chloroplast because that's where photosynthesis is going to be taking place. And so since there's light available, they have chloroplast, and on those leaves, they have stomatas, which are just openings for water and carbon dioxide to be able to go in and out, okay? We summarize photosynthesis with the following equation. 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 water with solar energy, which is light, creates glucose, which is C6H12O6, and it gives off oxygen as a byproduct or waste product, which we as humans will breathe in. So this is your equation. You do need to know the equation for photosynthesis. Everything before the arrow, we call our reactants. So that's what's going into photosynthesis. And everything after the arrow is our products. So that is what you are getting as a product of photosynthesis. So I think I kind of went over that already now that I'm seeing on this slide, but you can see here we have the overview of the equation one more time, and it's not going to hurt for us to go over the equation again. So your reactants, I said, are in orange. So those are your ingredients. That's what you need for photosynthesis to occur. Carbon dioxide and water, okay? We don't consider light a reactant. Light is what drives the equation, okay? And so there's a note at the bottom here, and it says solar energy, which is light from the sun, is necessary for photosynthesis to happen, as well as some enzymes, but it isn't considered a reactant or product. It's what drives the equation. And so your products then are the results. Okay, what do you get at the end? And so you have glucose and you have oxygen. So today we're going to oversimplify and figure out how do we go from carbon dioxide and water with the help of light in order to make glucose and oxygen. So first of all, we need to go back to that chloroplast. And remember, we've been going over the organelles, and we've been looking at how chloroplast is the organelle that is going to do photosynthesis. And so it's going to be important that we understand the structure of it, okay? It has two main parts. The grana is the pancake-like stacks of thylakoid membranes. And so if you're looking at this, they often call these individual things thylakoids. So think about thylakoids being your pancakes. Okay, that's just a common analogy they use in biology. So each individual pancake is a thylakoid. And when you have a stack of thylakoids, you call it a grana. The stroma is going to be all the fluid-like substance that's going to fill space between the grana. So you can see that this lighter yellow-green is all the stroma. Each individual pancake is a thylakoid, and your grana is going to be the entire stack. And here's some nice labels for you. I would suggest you guys probably making sure you write down or draw a quick sketch of this. It'll be helpful when we talk about what's going on in photosynthesis, just to know where everything is located. So why are plants green? Whoops, skipped ahead. The presence of the pigment chlorophyll is going to be what's causing your plant to appear green, okay? Chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, and other pigments called carotenoids are going to absorb every color of light in the sun except green, okay? And so what you end up seeing is not what's being absorbed, but what's being reflected. So therefore, green is left over and is reflected and is what we see. So the plant is actually absorbing every color of the light spectrum, but it's reflecting the green, which is why we see them as green. So there are going to be two stages of photosynthesis. And the first one is called the light dependent. It's often called the photoreaction. And the other one is going to be called light independent reaction. Okay, so the light dependent reaction is going to depend on light. So it's going to require solar energy. Okay. The electron transport chain is also going to be part of the light dependent reaction. Okay. So we are going to talk about this here a little bit more detail, but you need to realize that during the light dependent reaction, you're going to be using light, and you're going to have something called the electron transport chain. That is going to be a big part of the very first step of photosynthesis. The second stage of photosynthesis is called the light independent reaction, and this does not require any solar energy. And it is in this second light independent reaction where you're actually going to create the glucose molecules, which is going to be the fuel or food for the plant. This is also called either the dark reaction or the Calvin cycle. So we're going to look at that first stage, which was our light dependent reaction, and we're going to look at the purpose and the location, okay? First of all, the whole reason the plant does the light dependent reaction is to capture energy from the sun, which is why it's called the light reaction. And when it captures that energy, it's going to store it in energy carrying molecules called ATP and NADPH, okay? So here's what's happening. You have a flower, okay? And let me see if I will draw this out afterwards for you guys, but you have a flower and the sun is shining down on that flower. And remember, there's chloroplast inside the leaf, okay? And so you have sun shining on the chlorophyll, which is inside the chloroplast, which is inside the leaf, and you have water coming up through the roots. okay? When that light strikes the chloroplast and the water is coming up at the same time, it's actually going to split that water into two different things. The oxygen is just going to be released into the air for us to breathe, and the hydrogen is going to go into something called the electron transport chain, okay? And if we had more time and we were in honors bio, I would go into a little bit detail about the electron transport chain, but we are not going to today. I want you to know the electron transport chain is going to use that hydrogen from the water, and it's going to attach it to something called NADP. And so when the hydrogen attaches to NADP, it creates NADPH, okay? And you don't need to know how it does that. It just goes to the electron transport chain, and you need to know that's what comes out of it, okay? Also out of the electron transport chain comes ATP. And what is special about these two molecules are these are energy carrying molecules. So we're actually going to use ATP and NADPH to run or drive or begin the second stage of photosynthesis, which is the light independent reaction or the dark reaction, or also called the Calvin cycle. We can't begin the second step until we make energy to begin it. So this first part of photosynthesis is literally just creating energy so we can actually start the second part and create that glucose that we need. This first step, which is called the light reaction, occurs in the grana, specifically the thylakoids, so those pancakes, okay? Because inside those pancakes is where the chlorophyll is stored. And this inside the chlorophyll is where you have the electron transport chain, which is having these energy carrying molecules. So summary, water molecules are split into hydrogen and oxygen. Once that light strikes down, oxygen is released as a waste product, and ATP and NADPH are charged up by the sun. So because we have those light molecules and we have that hydrogen coming from the water, we can create ATP and NADPH all inside the electron transport chain. And these two things in orange are going to begin or drive or fuel the second stage of photosynthesis. Again, I told you guys, we are really simplifying this, okay? So I will go into a little bit of detail about the electron transport chain, but again, there is so much more to this, okay? So energy from the sun is going to be passed down the electron transport chain, and it's going to be stored inside the bonds of ATP and NADPH, okay? Remember, bonds are where we're storing energy. So the first bullet point I have here is that light energy excites electrons, okay? They do. So an electron transport chain, you have a bunch of electrons moving through. And when we say excites, they become full of energy. So that light energy, those photons, they're striking down on the chloroplast, they're causing the split of water, but they're also exciting these electrons. And the more excited these electrons are, the more they can move down the electron transport chain. And at the end, they're going to combine the final electrons to NADP and ADP, making NADPH and ATP, because those electrons are carrying those hydrogens with them that you split from the water. Okay, so you will already naturally find NADP plus and ADP in the electron transport chain, but it is the photons, the light energy, that excites the electrons to move and to bring those hydrogen atoms to attach. Okay. It says chemoosmotic process because hydrogen ions move down the gradient to make ATP. Don't worry about that, okay? We're not going to worry about that. So all you need to know is that these electrons are moving through the electron transport chain because they are fueled up by the light. And at the end, you can take NADP and ADP and make NADPH and ATP, okay? ATP, NADPH, and hydrogens are going to leave the grana and they're going to go into the stroma for the next stage, okay? So we have photosystems that help absorb the light. So you're going to have clusters of chlorophyll and proteins that trap energy from the sun. Okay, and this chlorophyll is a pigment that can absorb the sunlight. So energy is going to be transferred to the electrons to make them excited. This was a quick slide I put in just to show you how these electrons are being excited by the light. But I am not going to test you over this, so feel free to not write anything about this slide. But some of you guys that have some extra interest, because I'm going through this so fast, I wanted to throw in some extra details. So if you want to try to, piece the different pieces together, photosystems are inside chlorophyll, and that is what's trapping the light, and that is what's splitting the water, and that is what's exciting the electrons to make them move faster. Some more information on your electron carriers. So these molecules that carry electrons in order to pass on energy. So we talked a lot about the NADP, okay? That's an electron carrier. So they can accept a pair of high energy electrons and transfer them to different molecules. So what happens here is this NADPH is going to grab those excited electrons and it's going to allow them to become NADPH. And then ATP and NADPH are going to carry energy from the light dependent reaction, and it's going to help start the light independent reaction. Okay, so here's a picture. And again, I'm just going to kind of simplify this first one. You have sunlight coming down on the leaves. Inside the leaves, you have chloroplast. Inside the chloroplast, you have chlorophyll. In the chlorophyll, you have photosystems. Photosystems are capturing light. Light is exciting the electrons, which is causing the electrons to move in the electron transport chain. And then you have carbon dioxide also coming in through the stomata of leaves. You have water going up the roots of a plant. And when that light strikes water, it is going to split water in half. Oxygen is released for us to breathe in the air, and that hydrogen is going to go through the electron transport chain with those excited electrons, and it's going to get added on to NADP to make NADPH. And it'll be NADPH and ATP that is going to start and drive the second reaction, which is called the dark reaction or the Calvin cycle. So let's look at the Calvin cycle. Let's look at its purpose and location. Let's see. So the purpose, sorry about that. Whoops. The purpose of the independent reaction is to use the energy from those energy carrying molecules, which was the NADPH and the ATP. And they're going to make glucose or sugar out of those molecules. That's the goal of photosynthesis, is to make sugar. All of this other steps along the way is just done in order for us to create sugar. And all of the dark reaction or the light independent reaction is going to be occurring in the stroma of a cell. So we often call the light independent reaction the Calvin cycle, okay? And I am going to really, really simplify the Calvin cycle, all right? We're not going to go too much in detail about this. You're going to see a series of enzyme-assisted chemical reactions that are powered by that ATP and NADPH. And what happens is they produce a 3-carbon sugar from that carbon dioxide, okay? So here what you're seeing is with the Calvin cycle, you need carbon dioxide and you need that ATP and NADPH in order to begin, okay? And so they're going to use the energy in ATP and NADPH to produce a 3-carbon sugar from carbon dioxide and from the hydrogen in water, okay? The cycle is going to happen 2 times. So instead of having a 3-carbon sugar, you're going to get a 6-carbon sugar, which is glucose, which is why you have the C6, okay? That is basically the detail I'm going to go in through. There's a lot more to this, and if you're interested, you can totally follow the next couple of slides. But you can see there's a lot of chemistry. I'll briefly go over this, but again, this is nothing that you really need to look at. You can see they're grabbing carbon dioxide, and these enzymes are attaching to 5 carbons, and then they produce a 6th carbon, but that's unstable. So then they have to split it, and you can see a lot of other different G3Ps and other chemistry names. So if you're someone that's interested, I will be more than willing to go over this with you, but we are not going to require that for the test. What you need to know about the Calvin cycle is going to be this, just a summary, that it's a chemical reaction that is powered by ATP and NADPH in order to make the carbon dioxide and hydrogen into a 3-carbon sugar, which will have to happen twice to make glucose, which is a 6-carbon sugar. Okay, so we're going to skip over that. You can just see how complicated it can get. And so a reminder, chemosynthesis is going to be another type of way that organisms can make their own food. So photosynthesis is going to use light. Chemosynthesis is going to use chemicals. And so this is going to apply to those organisms like bacteria that are living deep in the ocean and don't receive light. They actually create their own food using chemicals like sulfur. So I just want you guys to know that that is, an option for some organisms. It's not only plants that can create their own food, but it is only plants that use photo or light. All right, you can see we are actually going to talk about the rate of photosynthesis next class, so I'm going to skip over that slide. We've already talked about that root cells do not need chloroplasts in our last lab, so we're just going to skip across that as well. And then all right, I'm sorry about the video. My computer died in the middle of my presentation, so I hope it doesn't screw it up too much. We are going to share again. There are some alternate pathways as well, but we are going to save that for next class as well. So we're going to look at just different plants or different types of plants that maybe do photosynthesis a little bit different. So we're going to save the rate and also the alternate pathways for next class. So I just want you guys to focus on just the big picture of photosynthesis and the different stages. We're not going to worry about all the minor details. Okay.